Can you name that? You got one of two guesses. Who would have written that lyric? Can't take the work out of the courage.
Dave Matthews.
Exactly. But do you know the song? Or are you just guessing because you know me?
I'm just guessing because I know you.
Damn it.
We didn't have to guess that. We just know.
Yeah. But it's a good line, you know. Does anyone get tired of your life? Do people give you that look like, oh, you're so courageous, right? Like, can't believe what you're doing and you're courageous. And then this song by Dave Matthews is called Gray Street, and it's a little bit depressing. It's about a young girl that wants her life to have more. It's actually kind of about attempting suicide, but she wants more um meaning and more spectacular out of her life. And she always ends up back on Gray Street because she wants to have the idea, but she doesn't realize you can't take the work out of the courage. That, it sounds like courage is supposed to, if you're just courageous, well, there's I feel like a lot of that with my yoga practice. I feel like sometimes avoid the drudgery of the work because at the end of the day, um, you need to be recognized that, yeah, it's courageous to start doing yoga for sure, but then you can't take the work out of it if you're gonna actually did I lose a whole bunch of people? Am I still have I been teaching so bad? Is this a really small class? It looks like it's a small class. That's all right. I better do something good then. So you can't take the work out of the courage, right? But what if some of the courage is actually being able to sit um more quietly in spaces that you've judged to be not important, right? So I think about centering and I think, oh, it's something I do. It's this wonderful thing. But and by the way, have you noticed our culture is not so great at boredom? We like unearned dopamine rushes, right? So we go to social media all the time. Like there's something courageous that happens in the ordinary. And a lot of your yoga practice, we go, oh, I need to slow down. And like it's almost like a drug. It's like, no, you need to sit there because that's where all the potential is. The potential is sitting in and within what is too quickly judged as not important, right? So sit up straight and tall. Sure, learn to soften your organs of perception and do all that, like soften the skin on the forehead. It's like, oh, I forget to feel stuff like that. And around the temples and the jaw, right? And the inside of the mouth. And for me, it really matters to relax my belly, to relax my throat, right? Like I forget, I got so much stuck in here, right? So like as you go, oh yeah, that feels so good. It's like, well, yeah, it feels good, but can you stay there? Right? You know how that trouble settling into Shavasana, right? But even in centering, can you stay there? Can you be quiet for an extended period of time? Where do you go when organs of perception soften more? Like, where is that place? It's not just relaxation. This place that you get to when you center shouldn't just be defined in terms of chaos, in terms of that you're not centering in most of your day. It's that time of year where I'm getting crushed by the sun through my window here. All right, it's going to move around a little bit. Half in the light, half in the dark. Right. So there's dimension here. And your mind's not going to know what to do with it. Lips together, teeth slightly apart. It's not just that you need to relax and slow down. This place that gets so quiet isn't exactly a place. It's more like a frequency, a different wavelength. And if you're honest, it never leaves you. It's never not there. You leave it, it doesn't leave you. It's amazing is that this place can have form. Asana is trying to bring structure back to the quiet frequency of existence. So start to feel your feet and sitting bones. I hope you know that it feels good to have more extension and alertness in your spine. Make it be part of your centering. Widen your shoulder tips. Lift the sternum down through the sitting bones. Take up more space, but don't lose the quiet. Good. And then release and then repose. Lift your sternum, drop your chin. I hope you found magic in how those two go together. That you played with the lift of the sternum and the drop of the chin. Feel more sturdy. Raise your head up with closed eyes. Open your eyes. Well, I want to talk a little bit, and I keep losing people off the screen. They're going off camera, so it makes me curious. I think I'm scaring people. I'm curious how many people, and I think it's funny because I was about to throw Angelique under the bus, but now she's off screen. So we'll see if I can shame her back onto screen. However, how many people have you ever had days was today? How many people today it was harder to center than normal? Raise your hand up. Yeah. How many, what if you, it was, how many was it easier to? Right. So it's interesting. So, like, Catherine, it was easier today for you. I saw your thumb go up. Why was it easier? How would you, what would easier, like, what, how did you judge it as easier?
Because it was more accessible,
Hmm.
because I'm not comfortable today.
Yep.
And so I needed refuge. And so I settled right into it.
Needed some refuge for someone that was harder. Who raised their hand for harder? So who wants to talk about it being harder? And eventually I want Forrest to answer the after whoever, Mark, why don't you go first?
I thought that when you gave the not the instruction, but the point of the difficulty of settling into Shavasana, like I kind of visualized that, and then it brought on a wave of anxiety. It's like I had to navigate that oncoming wave of anxiety to drop down in the moment presently, and it was more difficult than it normally is.
So I screwed you up with an instruction, man.
I took it and ran.
Yeah, so one thing I'm curious about, do you think there's a relationship between centering before class, or what do you think the relationship is between centering before class and Shavasana after class?
I mean, maybe it's a helpful lead in to be well centered at the start so that when Shavasana arrives, you're more settled and able
Yeah.
to get into that place.
Yeah, it's interesting there. I mean, that's one of those interesting questions. They are definitely different. And like today for you, it kind of like screwed up the centering, right? Right. Which is interesting. And it kind of, they're very different also. You're not doing Shavasana when you're centering, right? So in a way, I'm kind of like that I mentioned Shavasana now that you remind me of it, like, ooh, that might have been a mistake. However, right, there's something about it. There's what I was trying to compare was the sometimes it's really hard to get into Shavasana because the mind's picking at stuff. Like how I was gonna throw Angelique under the bus who went off screen is she kept, having the it. How many people when you're starting to center start to feel that you're got an itch somewhere? It happens in Shavasana too, that something's not quite right. Right. And the one thing of and it is that happens for sure, right? And all the time. And one of the things I was thinking, is that does your spine ever itch? No. Your mind's having a hard time coming to a certain something. Don't even want to say place. And so rather than get there, it's going to start noticing the other stuff. Like there's always a cacophony of story going on when you're trying to center or doing Shavasana, right? And it's not, and I'm pretty sure I can create itches, right? Have you ever tried to just willfully not respond to them? Right? And that usually screws me up. It usually gets louder. Maybe if I grip my teeth and I hold myself through an itch, right, that it'll go away. But then by the time I'm gritting my teeth to use my will to stop to get through it, suddenly I'm not actually doing what I'm supposed to be doing again, right? Who else besides Forrest? I want to hear that in a second, but like who else was hard for today? Judy.
Um, my cat decided to play with her catnip pickle 2 feet from me, and she talks when she does that. So it got
That
really
that
hard.
that's external for sure. So we can't anyone else besides Liz.
I had like in my body sort of an emotional wall where I just felt a lot of tightness and uh like silence, but not like you use the word silence more like a refusal to engage. that I had to try and just sit with gently to see and invite it to open to be able to get to a place where I could center with more of my body. And
So go ahead.
I didn't really get there until you had the instruction to lengthen in our spine and broaden our shoulders out.
Yeah.
And then doing those actions helped the tightness in my torso to soften.
Yeah, it's funny because that's part of why in both Shavasana and in centering, there's often a physical like instructions, because if the mind's left to sit alone, it's going to pick the story of sensation apart, right? And so if you can kind of get some body sensations to be in the lead, like, and so the spine one helped you, right? But like, and that's why in Shavasana, you might say, feel the empty space in your joints, or like relax your ankles, your knees. So you're actually forced into some sense of structure and more body awareness, so the mind doesn't notice the itches on your face. Looks like we lost Forrest. Forrest, are you there? Are you back? So and then Angelique, I got to throw you under the bus. You were gone, and I was throwing you under the bus when you were gone.
Yeah,
So
I'm going to let
go
Forrest
ahead,
go.
Angelique. Go ahead, Angelique.
Okay,
didn't hear the question. My
well,
dad
no,
sort of.
I was watching people do centering, which I'm trying to make as a point as where is the courage, right? So oftentimes courage is thought to be about an overcoming of something. Well, courage is often being able to sit in what's empty without judging it, which is where a lot of the courage is. So, but I was watching you center, and you kept having kind of an itch on your face, right? And I was wondering what that's not a bad thing. I mean, you got to, if it's itching, and there's a point where every yogi goes, that's itching so bad, I got to itch it. But I find once I itch an inch on my face, that then I feel that where I itched it more than the itch itself,
Yeah, I got
right?
another one.
And then you've given too much sensation to a place where you realize it really wasn't about the itch. But so what was happening to you inside?
I, I was really like my body wanted to go into that place, but my mind was like, Dad's nurse is coming soon. You should listen for the door. Like I was.
Oh, but that's real too, though.
Yeah. So I was kind of not. Yeah. I was in the chatter.
Yeah, and it's funny, like how you get out of that. That's part of where that's part of what I'm trying to get to. It's not like, you know how when you're not able to center very well, you kind of get pissed at yourself, or if you
Mhm.
don't do a good shavasana, ain't that the dumbest thing you've ever done?
Yeah.
Like everybody, like to get pissed at yourself for not being able to center. Well, the fact is your mind is trained to be outward. That's how we ran from saber-tooth tigers, right? Like it literally is wired to what's outside. It's outward facing. It's not naturally inward facing. And I've been over the years been taking much more seriously the fact that Patanjali's, and I just keep having this line over. It's not like I'm reading the Yoga Sutras, but Patanjali is saying the oscillations of the mind have to cease. That the mind actually has to disappear in order for you to be inward. Right. And so this is one of the reasons why I fundamentally have problems with using the language of mindfulness when you're talking about inward awareness. No, actually, if you take kind of literally and take pretty seriously that, you know, maybe someone really kind of that knew a lot, Patanjali is saying, no, it actually needs to disappear. It needs to become a pure observer, not an observer with judgment, right? And so it's like, wait. And so then you sit up straight and tall again. Don't worry, we'll actually do some asana here. Sit up straight and tall again. And by the way, when I'm most agitated, one of the things is like people think of relaxation as a place you need to get to. It's a thing you need to integrate. It's not a place to get to, in my opinion. It's like when I was saying this thing about the quiet part or the centering part, um, I can't remember how I said it, but like it's actually it never leaves you. You leave it. It's the other way, right? And the idea that you're getting somewhere when you center, that's just not right. Like the existential metaphysic has this thing in it, and if you take the yogis kind of very loosely seriously, when you get to a place like this, there is no separation between you and the universe. The question is, can you be there and be active? And that's asana, right? It's like, can you actually keep it with you as you move? So start to move around, but like, let's actually try to center. Remember, I'm still thinking about the heart. I didn't tell you I was thinking about this, so I say, remember, it's not fair, but I'm still on last week with my mistake between the heart has 100,000 ways to sleep or the heart has 100,000 ways to speak, right? And I've been confusing the two, and I think it's interesting. So I'm curious about this place that my mind has trouble being in, right? And resists and itches, And I'm thinking about how do you can't take the work out of the courage, and there's more of me here. So like I'm thinking about Jennifer on the screen. And Jennifer, I know you haven't been able to move as much, and life's been changing for years. And so she's pretty knows the place where things aren't moving as much. And she's quiet. The thing about Jennifer that's so amazing is that she stays grateful. Whereas if is Michael still on the call? Michael, he was on before. He might have gotten too bummed out by what. Oh, there's Michael. Michael is constantly moving. So, like his body and his nervous system, because what he lives with is constantly moving. And Jennifer's like a contrast, right? So, Michael's going to have to find the quiet because with Michael, his body, his muscles are constantly firing, his nervous system is constantly firing, right? And then some of us are in a place where things aren't firing as much. And each place has a wisdom, right? Each thing has a wisdom. So the question is, to what extent can you? So one of the things that Mike, I'm sorry to keep talking to you about Michael, about you, but like one of the things that I always found interesting and a thing we were trying to figure out together is what does Shavasana look like for Michael when he has to move all the time, right? And so and what was asana look like as much with Jennifer? So that's where the lead is there. Like, what does asana look like for Jennifer when she can't move as much? So when you take those two extremes, right? And you think, well, how do I get them all? So the heart has 100,000 ways to sleep. The heart has 100,000 ways to speak. And somehow I'm to quote another song, I'm stuck in the middle with you. We're stuck in the middle together, right? Right. So it's like you're moving around. So when you get like, I love the idea of mindful movement. Well, why wouldn't you let your body teach you? It's not like mindful movement. It's like, holy cow. Like let the body, like the movements of the body. So in a way, when Liz was talking about centering, right? When it helped her to finally invite, I'm curious if you actually talked to yourself, Liz, when you said you invited your body to be, right? Or did you just let your body show you? So sit up straight and tall. So in order to make space between the vertebrae in your back, what are you going to do? So when you sit up straight and tall, remember we're sitting all the time, so life's always heavy like an existential thumbprint, right? Those of us that are sitting all the time, more like how do you uncompress? So let's talk about like, so you can hit down through your sitting bones or lift up through your chest. So try that, right? That's, if you do that too quick, like, so remember we're talking about how do you take the work out of the courage? Or you can't take the work out of the courage, right? So you hit down through your sitting bone, you lift up through your chest. So you're trying to make space in your spine. Just like it's hard to bring centering into asana, how do you bring the energy that comes from centering into the extension of your spine? Where do you, so if I can just lengthen my spine, right? I can't just do it physically from the outer body, right? And I can do asana that way. I can do the outside of the poses. I can like make the shapes. I can move to them too quickly, right? Or in my opinion, too quickly. But that's one way to do it. And you move it long enough and you breathe long enough, it's all going to come into fruition, right? But if I want to make the spaces between my vertebrae count as I lift my chest, where do I have to go? So Angelique's going to lift up. She's going to put it in traction. I like it. I like you. I like you. Lift up a little bit. Allow gravity to make some space for you. Right? So I'm lifting up and going, oh, there's a way. There's a way to touch. My mind gets to touch the space of the uncompressed, right? Whatever that sensation is. So I'm going to, that's not a bad, that's not a bad strategy. But when then I sit back down and I collapse back in through gravity, do I just feel sad about that I don't have this feeling in my vertebrae when I actually sit back in the world I have to sit in? So again, so how am I sitting here and making, how am I getting to the place to include the sensation? Do you think the space or the freedom in the vertebrae comes just from having it extended physically? Where's the work? Where's the courage? All right, so we could do dog pose, right? That's never a bad idea. Some sort of action, hands on your table. I'll do it on my wheelchair. So I start to like make structure more, right? So I'm gonna like put my wrists on my knees and use my arms and lift my chest. And I'm I'm trying to get some length in my spine. I'm trying to make sure I feel my sitting bones and I extend out through the top of my head, right? I start to make it more physical. Isn't it weird? Does anyone notice that if you work the underside of your arms, your spine extends more? You ever notice that when you're doing it, when you're doing dog pose? Right? When you work instead of the top side of your arms, if you start to activate the underside of your arms and the top side of your arms, so you're pressing down through your index finger, right? You're rolling your upper arm up, but you make sure the underside of your arms start to engage and the shoulder blades drop, and suddenly you got some traction on your spine. And then you can try to breathe into that space. So you breathe in to have your breath kind of help you with the inhalation and the exhalation. So I'm starting to do some of the physical work to feel the space. And then I notice the collapse. I'm gonna let go and fall out of the pose. So, but now the fact that I just made space like this, even when I collapse, it's different. Now I'm gonna lean forward more. Right? And I'm gonna now, as soon as I lean forward, there's a different opportunity on my feet on the floor, on mine are on my foot pedals, right? Where my sitting bones is, and then I can lengthen a different way. So now I'm pressing down on my forearms, I'm extending out through the top of my head. But if I were to just hit down with my sitting bones, press my forearms into my thighs, and stretch out to the top of my head, right? Keep your, do that, but don't use your short shoulder blades yet. right? So like if you just do the outside of the pose, again, where's the work and where's the courage? Okay. So if I press down on my forearms, hit down with my sitting bones and just do the instructions such out the top of my head, right? That doesn't suck. I can kind of feel that, right? Okay, now I'm gonna, but like if one thing's going one direction, something's got to go another direction. That's kind of like a principle in yoga. That's why the instruction is hit down through your sitting bones and stretch out to the top of your head. But when I just hit down through my sitting bones, press down with my forearms too, and just start stretching the top of my heads, I kind of miss an opportunity to drop my shoulder blades and spread them. So now if I drop my shoulder blades and spread them while stretching out to the top of my head, hit down through my sitting bones, and then really go out to the top of my head. Now, if I broaden across the collarbones, broaden the space between the shoulder blades, suddenly my spine's much more dynamic. And then release. So how we're in this pose, we're extending our spines, right? So we're going to turn it in and put a little bit of a back bend in it, right? And we're going to change the energy again. But remember, the work and the courage, the work is how you figure out how to do it and you start practicing it. The courage is to let it touch more of you, right? To actually have more of your, let's say in this case, your spinal energy, the stuff that you're trying to find in centering, right? Having that part of you come into an asana. Now, that part of you that's quiet and less knowable is going to, by definition, be less violent in a pose. It's going to make your poses more graceful, but your mind's going to try to turn it into will. It's going to try to churn it into will, right? All right, so I'm leaning forward again. I'm trying to figure out how to get this idea of, or get the experience of there being extension in my spine. But I'm trying to, as I get that extension, I don't want to just get it physically. What I was trying to contrast with the instruction, don't do it so good yet, was just by hitting down through your shin bones and stretching down through your top of your head, was trying to get there too fast. That would be taking the work out of the courage, right? So in this, I'm going to try to make it more interior. So I'm going to ground. I'm actually folding my hands and feeling my forearms on my thighs because it's giving me more of a base. And then I'm finding my sitting bones. And then before I extend out to the top of my head, I'm broadening between my shoulder blades, hitting through my sitting bones out to the top of my head, and then dropping my shoulder blades down towards my waist, broadening across the collarbones, broadening between the sternum, behind the sternum, between my shoulder blades. And this is all of a sudden becoming a really intense pose. Now, I just noticed when I was doing all that, I lost the connection between my hands. Now I want to make sure I'm staying in the bottoms of my feet. There's work here. Well, can you let all this work bring with you the centering from the beginning of class? Don't just do it with your breath. Don't take the work, the work out of the courage. Good, and then release. In some ways, right, going too quickly, and so this is, I'm about to say something really kind of stupid. It's not even true, okay? It's not completely true for sure. But if you go too quickly to your breath, you're like bypassing the work. Except it's a brilliant bypass, right? So it's like, it's got all, it's not like it's a mistake, but you want, and start rocking back and forth again. You want to make sure. So I do weird things when I'm trying to bring more of myself into a pose. So I'm going to lean forward here for a second, but I'm going to try before. That's what I mean about weird work, right? Um, I could just come forward and lean forward and come on my forearms, right? But remember, I want to try to bring with me the quiet space that you try to touch in centering into asana. Okay. So I'm going to try to do something weird. So sit up straight and tall. So I do all kind of this weird stuff, right? Trying to make things kind of like trying to get it where, oh, I'm not better not to sit. So sit up straight and tall and open to what's behind you. So remember, right now I'm trying to figure out how to bring more of my nervous system, we even call it proprioception, into the movement, right? So if I sit up straight and tall, and by the way, sitting up straight and tall, what if I told you to bring alert stillness to your mid-back, to your kidneys? Does that actually help you feel the space behind you? So what if I were to assume that my spine's integrated to the space behind me? So instead of just plopping forward like I just did, like I would do more most during my day, what if I try to move forward in a way that brings the empty space behind my back with me as I come forward, right? In order to do that, I'm going to have to keep my chest lifted. So I'm going to come forward and bring the whole world with me, the universe with me as I come forward. Try it. And then back. So now all of a sudden, I'm moving more. If I just plot forward like I would if I'm not paying attention, now with the alertness of my spine, I'm trying to bring everything with me. And to keep it awake, I'm going to have to lift my chest as I do it. And now when I come back, it's funny too, because I'm coming back, I'm like, it's coming with me. All the space in the room is coming with me when I'm going forward and back, because I'm using my sense of proprioception. So now I'm going to sit up straight and tall, balance my head over my neck, feel the empty space in the room, come forward with more dimension in the room. Then I'm going to turn it up towards the sky and lift my sternum in upward facing dog. But I'm going to let the whole room come with me. I'm not in charge of the whole room, but the whole room will come with me, right? And I hold my shoulder blades up. And as I spread between my shoulders and feel my sitting bones and feel my legs and feel the space on each side of my head, suddenly I've got more of the connection, and I'm straining right now. It's not easy to talk. Good, and then release. But when I do it like that, I've got more of the energy of Shavasana or of centering with me when I'm doing the asana, right? I'm trying to figure out how to bring more with me. So I'm going to go take one arm up and try to bring it all, be in the whole room, right? And feel like dancing in the whole, I can feel the air on my skin. I'm being in the whole room, right? And then as it comes back down and more of me's happening, I'm doing the same. So I'm feeling as much as I can. The movement, the air on the skin, as much as I can. I am probably moving air through the whole room too, but I'm making sure it's centered in my spine, that I'm not just throwing my arm out so it's just in my limb. So here's me like not using my spine at all. I just throw the arm out, right? Here's me like bringing more of the room. You might call that a better yoga pose. Or maybe I'm bringing centering into movement. Good, and then release. Again, I can see the world that we mostly trudge through. I'm just throwing my arm out, right? It's like, okay, yeah, and that fatigues differently. When I just throw my arm out, I definitely fatigue differently. Now, I'm going to try to have it come from my spine, bring more of the quiet energy through, right? And then all of a sudden What's behind me in the room is part of the pose. My connection to the earth comes from the energy behind me, not just from pushing down. All of a sudden, more of me, as I come back through, I'm coming back through. I'm coming back out, and it's coming more out of the ground now, right? So I'm not just doing it with my arm, I'm doing it with everything. Yeah, you can train all your muscles and then come back to center. You can train all your muscles to be precise and perfectly firing, right? But what happens when you do that is that eventually it starts to bring the whole room with you, right? You and I need to figure out how to bring the whole room with me. When I'm more in the room, I'm more graceful. If I'm just throwing my arm out, I'm not being part of the room. I could do this. This would make me stronger muscularly. Do 500 of these and see how sore you get, right? 500 of these, just throw them out like, oh God, this is bad. Don't do it. I'm not gonna, but I'm just like, that is workout. That's what they showed me in physical therapy, right? Now I'm gonna come forward and back, right? Right. So like, how do I define courageous, right? If I like had worked harder and lifted more weights and PT, did more of these, right? Right? To get stronger. No, these aren't bad. There's nothing wrong with those, right? But that's not where the courage is. The courage is not actually in how many times I can throw my arms out and take my legs wide now. The courage is, can I be more connected to the universe while I take my arms out? Right? So I've got my legs wide now, because of course I want to do that each Monday. Right? And I'm pushing my arms out. I better show you on the camera. So I'm wanting to sync up. This is kind of like a quick, cheap way to do some like standing poses. You can do some things because I can't move my own legs. So I'm gonna take my arms out, my push up with my arms to my legs like this. And I can just do it like throwaway, like throwing my arms up. Or now I can do this while I engage my spine. Right? So I'm pushing out into my thighs, engaging my spine. Now I'm going to say, wait, can I bring the space behind me with me as I come forward, move my thighs out, keep my chest lifted, right? Oh, I think I actually can. And when I do that, by the way, my feet tingle more. Or energetically where my feet are, that starts to tingle more, right? So now I got a trick for you. So when you're trying to balance and you're realizing that it's not just a balance, is not just a physical thing, it's like a in the whole room thing. Grace is not just in your body. Grace is, can you move through space so the space is coming with you, right? So when you center right here for a second and bring the back with you and you come forward and you feel the whole change, can you think about or open to the fact that the space behind you has to be like a pillow top or a feather floating into the space in front of you, right? So you start to use proprioception more, where you try to move the space behind you and not crash through the space in front of you, but you actually try to go, okay, my spine's going to move through space. I'm going to bring the space behind me forward, but it's got to gently meet the space in front of me, right? So I'm going to try it. And note what happens if I slump my shoulders and try to do this. I don't connect the two spaces. If I go too fast without thinking about it, the two spaces aren't connected. If I extend my spine, keep my chest lifted, bring the space behind me forward, let it touch the space in front of me, make sure I stay in my sitting bones and legs, suddenly this gets more graceful. Now, this type of awareness is how you do really complicated poses. You start to bring the space around you with you. You don't just force your way through space, right? And what's great is that it comes with repetition too. But a lot of times the work is in the repetition. So when I start making sure I'm feeling the whole room. So I'm curious, when you try to feel the whole room, let's talk about that for a second. This is a 3-hour class now, right? When you try to feel the whole room, what do you do? Does anyone, do you have a technique for it? Angelique, how do you feel the whole room? Do
Well,
you pray to, do you pray to God? How do you feel the whole room?
no, I I usually have to close my eyes for whenever I'm trying, and then I just try to do a
So
combination
what
of
happens when you close your eyes? What sensation advantage do you get?
I'm able to visualize. I know that sounds weird, but just like the, sort of like an inner visualization of myself in space. And there's which seems weird because I could always like just look around and see myself in my room, but I'm able to feel myself in my room better when I close my eyes, and I know what's around me. But then when I breathe, it's like I'm creating um, creating my space.
Yeah, so by the way, in whatever your techniques are, not just talking Angelique, um, there's no one way to do this, right? There's what works. Okay, so like for most of you, I'd say don't close your eyes. It's going to throw you off balance, right? Because proprioception is like proprioception. I mean, but the advantage that comes from closing your eyes, and this is why it's smart, Angelique, is that it makes your mind not go as outward because you've literally lessened input from outside. So that's why a lot of people, when they're trying to feel inwardly, they close their eyes because otherwise their mind follows the outside. And then, Angelique, I imagine, because I do the same thing sometimes, I imagine, or I don't think it's an imagining, when I close my eyes, somehow I can feel where my skin is more. I can kind of visualize my place in the room. All that stuff is all true, right? Like however you unpack that, right?
Yeah, I mean, and then I
So
can open my eyes and be a part of the.
yeah. So you kind of get centered by closing your eyes, which is to try to not be as outward and have your mind be judgmental. All those things are your techniques for bringing centering into the movement of the room, right? And there is no one way to do this. Mark, you had your hand up quick. I know I can't talk.
And so I was just gonna say, yeah, with repetition, like I noticed that like when I do it and I do it and I do it and I do it, like it builds up this kind of a stronger force to bring the space with me. Like the more
Totally.
times I do it, yeah.
Can't take the work out of the courage, right? The idea that you can do a pose one time and have it be get everything is just not true. Bill Sweeney, your hand was up.
I was listening and took a mouthful of food, but please
Awesome.
forgive me. I found for me, Angelique, I agree, and Mark, I agree. When I exhale, I have to keep my eyes closed, and as I transition into inhale, I try to open them slowly and come back into space, and then exhale, close my eyes.
So
Open them, and I'm joining the two and let them fall where they may. And just trying to pick up the scraps and put together the puzzle. So
yeah, so I think again, however you do it, just know there are a lot of ways to do it. You need to practice them all, right? So in a way, what Bill's describing, but inhaling with and open your eyes as you inhale and come back actually mirrors the expansion of the inhalation, right? Exhalation, I can totally get, comes back to the bone and why you would do that, right? I mean, and Bill, and all of you are talking about getting non-positional awareness, right? To try to figure out how to, which would be kind of what happens in centering, right? Which you're trying to integrate. And remember, like, again, like, has anything really in the universe changed whether your eyes are open or closed? It's the same as it ever was, right? And so it doesn't mean that, but notice that they're both types of techniques, right? But when it comes to, so for those of you that are used to practicing non-positional awareness, right? To get to where you center from, that's smart. That's good. Try to do it sometimes with your eyes open because we're also trying to integrate the proprioceptive part of the nervous system, which actually is lessened by your eyes closed. So it's a good technique. And eventually you want to be able to bring that part of you with your eyes open. Does anyone practice Shavasana with your eyes open? How about centering with your eyes open? Remember, you can't take the work out of the courage. Doesn't mean
That's the next step on the ladder for me.
yeah, but my point is,
It's
again,
always another step.
getting back, yeah, but it's not even a step. My point is that it's the better way to do Shavasana is with your eyes closed. But in principle, you should be able to do Shavasana with your eyes open. So sometimes you should practice it, right? And you should know that, remember, if everything is always as it always is and has been, everything's already unified. Your technique for getting there is not as important as you might think. All right, so we're getting off here. So, but getting off track and we're getting to the end. But my point is that notice I hate, like, for example, one of the things I used to say to teacher trainings, is I used to, in teacher trainings, just go, I said, everyone tonight, when you go home, brush your teeth with your hand that you never brush your teeth with. And it's just horrible. I used to joke about it. When I do that, I'm sometimes like brush my eyebrows, man. My hands just is not as coordinated, right? And it's not like I brush with my left hand, right? I don't brush I can hardly brush with my right hand. But once in a while, it's good to remember to try to brush with your right hand. This is what I'm talking about in terms of these techniques of what it means to go inward, what it means to find the magic of what you're looking for when you're centering. And that the work is in trying to get there from different directions and trying to be able to know that that place in you, this is why asana is not the only limb, right? But it's like eventually you want to be able to have that place come with you when you're moving in asana, right? So this idea of bringing the front and the back and making them touch each other like light pillows, right? Rock back and forth, like have the front and back with you, right? Just do it right now, right? And when you go from side to side, the tendency is to collapse farther into this side and open more on this side. It's like, wait. And once you start to balance this side with this side, your spine's going to extend. It's your spine that's going to keep all the directions, not your mind, right? And so you're going back and going, wait, I'm moving through space and the space is supporting me, right? I'm going to go forward and back and watch, feel and watch the whole thing. And what I mean watch, I obviously kind of mean like that is kind of what Angelique is doing. I mean, notice it. I kind of can notice it better when my eyes are closed. right? And I'm making sure so when I start moving, right, everything's coming with me. And it's not just because I'm imagining it, it's because it's true, right? Yeah, it's going to help if you can get your muscles firing better, right? And the precision, the physical precision of asana is going to help your poses. But part of it is having the courage and to let more be true. Like as I come forward, the backside of me, behind me is coming with me. But that doesn't mean I just get to see it once. It means I got to practice it. You guy can't take the work out of the courage. And but suddenly, when all of a sudden I'm more in the room, my poses get less violent and they get more graceful because I'm being comfortable with the part of my poses that I don't get to control. I just get to be part of what's here. I don't control everything. I just get to like utilize everything. One of the lines that really got me thinking, right, was when I heard a comment by the Dalai Lama saying, everyone gets the same 24 hours, right, of every day, right? And then I started to think about everyone gets access to the universe, the energetic universe in the same way. Nobody's got better access to here than you do. It's whether you figure out how to use it, right? How to realize that your asanas are actually part of everything. And it's courageous. All right. Let's just sit in center for a second. When you practice really well, though, or you get more integrated in your, I don't know what well means. When you like, I'm feeling really connected to the space in my room right now. So when I go to Shavasana quickly, I've already been practicing Shavasana. This class has not been as physically demanding. So I'm going to be able to get there, quote, more quickly. Oh, of course, it makes sense. I'd want to soften my organs of perception because that helps me get there. In this one, I'm leaning forward on my table, so I'm going to very gently keep my chest a little bit more lifted. So, and then I'm going to keep finding Shavasana. My eyes are closed because it feels good. Feel your breath. Don't change it. Thank your body. It keeps you alive. It keeps you alive. Start to bring yourself back. Slightly deeper inhalation. Slightly longer exhalation. So I had this, um, got kind of honored this weekend, and everyone I could tell was thinking that my story's courageous, right? That's part of why, you know, and and it's like, one other thing, and that when you do adaptive yoga, I'm sure when you tell friends and family, they kind of, well, that's so great, and they have that kind of like judgment of, either you're weird or you're courageous, whatever, probably a little bit of both, right? And and it's like courage is being able to stay present while having less, not proving that you can do more. And I completely miss the work and the courage, right? The work is in being here, allowing the space behind you to lightly touch the space in front of you as you move through space. Because, like, if I fall forward too fast, I got no control, because I'm paralyzed from the chest down. It's like I got to move through space with less, right? Not collide the front and the back. I need to make them like balance. That's the work, not making the more overcome the less, right? It's different than that. That's the story that's much harder to tell. All right, everybody. Hands together. Namaste. The spirit in me bows the spirit in you.